Hello, everyone. Welcome to Across the Pond, the podcast where I speak to people from around the world. Today, I get to speak with Steven, an actual person from across the pond, dude. And we're actually starting to live up to the name, to the title of this podcast. Steven and I talk a lot today about his podcast, not to be some like weird self-promotion thing, but we talk a lot about his podcast because it deals a lot with some of the events that are going on in his life. Him and his wife are expecting, and so his podcast talks a lot about birth and trying to get pregnant in that entire process. And so me, being a guy who is married, I tried to, my wife and I were thinking about getting pregnant. So we talk about that a lot. We also talk about sports, more specifically football, not American hand egg, American football, but actual football and rugby. And then we also talk a little bit about suicide and kind of I'll leave it at that. We talk about suicide. It's a very great conversation. No, we also talk about Steven's job, which is pretty fascinating to me. I love learning about stuff like that. So, it was a really good conversation. I really did enjoy all of this. I hope you can enjoy it too. It was very, very fascinating. Very good. Just a little forewarning. There are some blips in the conversation. I was having some internet issues, and so Steven will be talking, then he'll cut out for about a second or two. I tried to go through the episode and edit out as much of those as I could, but if you hear that, it's not your headphones. It's just the audio coming from this, so I apologize for that. Oh, shoot. Hello? Yeah, can you hear me? Awesome. Hold on just 1 second. All right, sick. There we go. For some reason, my audio wasn't coming through the recording software, but now we're all good.
What's your setup?
I use OBS, if you're familiar with that.
Not really, no, to be honest. My kind of expertise on audio recording, even though I've been doing podcasting for about 10 months now, isn't the best, to be honest.
What program do you use?
My whole setup is I basically record on Zoom, and then I do like a local recording, so I can have a separate track per kind of co-host, and then I just edit that in Audible, not Audible, in I get my audio software mixed up in Audacity, and then I just publish that on Anchor, and then everything is out there for people to listen to. But I've got kind of pretty basic mic plugged into my laptop directly, and that's it. The podcast I do because it's more kind of conversational between three people. It doesn't need to be the clearest and the cleanest. But maybe one day I'll probably upgrade to something more serious.
Nah, I'm kind of the same way. I still record everything on one track just because I feel like that's easier. I mean, a lot of people do 2 tracks and they do all the, super hardcore editing. I don't do that because I feel like it kind of takes away from the point of the idea of like just a conversational hour, you know what I mean? But it's super weird. I'm gonna change my microphone so you can hear what I would normally sound like if I used the microphone that I record.
Gotcha.
I would sound like this, and it just sounds crappy, right? It doesn't sound very good.
It's very, I'm not sure what the right word for it, but it sounds like you're in another room, I guess. It's a bit muted.
Yeah, it's super weird because like I'm using my headset. I have like a one of the higher end Logitech headsets because I play a lot of video games, and so of course you want to have the best headset, right? Because that's what makes you win games. Not really, but I have I think it's like the Logitech like G Pro X or something like that. It's supposed to have some sort of like microphone technology in the thing, and so that's what makes it sound good, right? But then the one that I use to record my voice for the podcast is an Audio Technica, some USB thing, and it sounds good after I tweak it just a little bit in the program that I use, but it sounds like utter dog crap when I try and talk with people through Zoom or through Discord. Everyone's like, Dan, why do you sound like you're in a garbage can or in another room? And I'm like, wait, it shouldn't sound like that. It sounds really good. It's just weird to me how microphones and stuff work. It doesn't make sense.
Oh my God, I've gone to this is why I've improved my recording process has improved quite dramatically over the last kind of just under a year I've been doing things. But the quality of gear I'm using. It's just this every time you kind of research, you go down a rabbit hole, and there's just so many different mics and there's so many different headsets and things like that. So for me, as long as I'm happy with kind of how the things I'm doing sound, then it's close enough for me. I'm not doing a voiceover for an audio book, and so it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
So almost there, sounds good, and for me, as long as the content is funny or interesting, then that's half the battle, really.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I'm at. So you've already started talking a bit about your podcast. I'm kind of curious because so of course, you and I have been in talks for, I don't know, like almost 4 months or something like that. Like one thing
Yeah, it's
led
a
to
while
another.
back, right? Yeah,
Yeah, a
yeah.
while back, like we just couldn't find a time that worked out, which is fine. I'm glad that we finally figured out a time now. But kind of run me through like because I'm looking over your thing because for those of you who don't know, I fill out a form, or I created a form. People fill it out. That's how I get in contact with them. And Stephen, you put on your form that you started a podcast when your wife became pregnant.
Yeah, that's correct, right? And that's how, like, I've gone over quite a big journey, but Reddit and seeing your post on Reddit in the podcasting subreddit is how I, came aware of what you were trying to do, which is why I filled out the questionnaire, I should say 4 months ago. But I use that subreddit quite a lot for advice and tips of how to be a better podcaster, and yeah, it's basically would have been about this time last year. I had the idea. Me and my wife were pretty certain that we would try to have a baby last year in 2020, and we'd be married for some time now, so we'll be. We've actually been together for 7 years this
Wow.
year, and we've been married for over 2 years now. So we were pretty certain we wanted to have a child, and literally that we were supposed to be going to the Dominican Republic last year in the summer, but because of COVID, that was kind of out the window. Traveling and things like that was a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
So we decided that we would have a child, right? We would try to have a child at least. But so this time last year, just after Christmas, I was actually looking for podcasts about being a dad because I'm a pretty big podcast listener.
Yeah.
And I'm also a little bit, what would be the right word? I'm not necessarily anal, I guess, but I like to be prepared for things. Big things like buying cars and buying houses and having children. I think is probably a good idea. You're educated on that, right? And so I was looking around and I couldn't really find anything that was interesting, but also educational, but also interesting. There's a few out there by men, and some of them are pretty good. They stopped, and some of them are, to be honest, they're good from an educational point of view. But I just felt maybe the charisma, I guess, with the hosts was a little bit off, because oftentimes they're strangers or they're people in kind of the podcasting industry, and they have guests on, so you just don't have that familiarity. So I couldn't find anything which is really what I was looking for. So then, because I have two really close friends who are great fathers themselves, who I've known I've known both of these friends for 20 plus years. I thought, why don't we just do our own podcast? And this was during lockdown, and I wasn't seeing my friends because you weren't allowed outside out your house. I don't know. I'm not sure where you are based, Dan, but in the UK where I'm based. There's been. I know you're based in the States. I'm not sure what state you're based in, but in the UK, there's been pretty strict kind of unilateral measures across the country a few times now for lockdown. So you're all stuck indoors. So I thought, right, why don't I kind of kill let's say 3 birds with 1 stone here. First of all, I can try and learn how to be a good dad from my 2 friends who are great dads. And because we're classic men, we've never really talked about what it's like to be a dad, to be honest, because what it's like when guys get together.
Yeah.
It's very rarely do you discuss things that are serious. And and also it could be kind of a bit of a hobby, right? While we're in lockdown, because you don't have a huge amount to do when you're stuck indoors 7 days a week. And it was an opportunity to see my friends, right, and speak to my friends. And again, which you can do during lockdown. So that was about kind of, we actually started, even though I had the idea about a year ago, we started probably 10 months ago, I imagine now. And it was interesting because it was literally at the start of mine and my wife's journey, right? We were just starting and trying to get pregnant. So I thought it'd be a good idea for me to kind of go through what it's like from, having the idea of when you think you're ready to be a parent, to what it's like trying for a baby. Because it took a bit of time for me and my wife to actually get pregnant, not because of any problems, just because we didn't really take it super serious at the beginning.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was really interesting to kind of go over that. And then when we got pregnant, we've essentially just kind of, I've used it as almost half a diary of what me and my wife are going through on our journeys to becoming parents, and half of an opportunity to get some advice and answers to questions that I literally know nothing about. Right? It's kind of amazing how it's one of the jokes I actually say in the podcast is, it's kind of amazing how you have to take tests to qualify for jobs, and you have to take tests to drive a car, but doctors and nurses just let you leave hospitals once you've had the child without any kind of education whatsoever. So it's been a really amazing journey for me. It's been really fun. I've also learned a new skill, right? Because just doing podcasting, which you'll be familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of why I started engaging with the podcasting community on Reddit, which is absolutely amazing resource for people getting into podcasting.
Yeah.
And now we've recorded about 20 episodes. We've got 17
Nice.
published. So we do one it's about every 2 weeks, because they're quite long, like hour and a half. And that's something that's been really amazing, is it's actually quite remarkable how long you can talk about things like how often babies poo, and how often how often baby have to drink milk, right? It's pretty amazing, the level of detail we can go in. And 10 months later, that's where I am now.
Nice. It sounds like a fun journey. Just so you know, I'm in Seattle area.
Okay.
And we kind of had the same thing when it came to COVID restrictions. It seemed a little more lax, or at least what the general consensus was maybe a little more lax. When the whole thing started almost a year ago, which is crazy to think about, that we've been in this state of the world for almost a year. A lot of people didn't necessarily take it seriously, me included. Like, I remember when our government said, oh, don't worry about masks, just try and stay away from people, like it'll all be okay. We'll get over it. And so people are like, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden it seemed like overnight, everyone started saying, no, you got to do this. And then the government said, yeah, you should probably be doing this. This is what we need to do. And everyone was still like, because they didn't post any new news, if that makes any sense. Like, they didn't say, hey, like it's more deadly than we thought, or whatever it was. They just said, you should probably do this. And they didn't really back it up. And then, long story short, over the long time, they're like, all right, states, your governors can do whatever they want, blah, 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 blah. And so, we had the whole lockdown thing. There was like 2 or 3 months where my wife and I were in lockdown. So it was kind of sucky, but kind of going off of your podcast thing, like, it's been so much fun to be able to do this sort of stuff. Yours is a little different than mine, because you're talking with your friends about being a parent. That's really cool. We need more resources like that, because you have a lot of books and stuff. But here's the thing: a lot of people, me included, I don't like to read. I can't open up a book and just kind of look at it and learn something from it. It's hard for me to do that. I need to listen to someone. That's how I learn. I'm more of an audible learner than I am a whatever that other way of learning is, by reading. I'm not sure what that's called. I should know, but I don't. But your thing is really cool. You're talking to people and your friends, and you're learning all about this parenting thing. Mine's a little different, but it's still kind of cool. The resources that you can get, the stuff that you can learn about yourself when it comes to, say, it's not necessarily public speaking, but it kind of feels like it is, because you have to try and
Sure.
figure out how to talk to someone for, a good hour and a half. I've had conversations with people and they've been, 50 minutes. And then I've had conversations with people and they've been almost 2 hours. And it seems like it can just keep going. And, the valuable skills that you learn as a person from doing all of that is just really neat. It's really fun. You get to learn so much about people. I've learned so much about so many different things, man. Like I could go on and on and on about all the just really cool things that I've learned about. For example, I learned a lot about what people struggle with when it comes to mental health and the different ways that they themselves have struggled with that aspect of their life. I've learned a lot about burlesque dancing, which was a very interesting episode. I learned a lot about what people, and this is going to sound disrespectful to some people, I don't mean it like this, but what they think transgenderism is to them, because each person I feel like has their own meaning behind it. So, I've learned about so many different things and so many different aspects of, people's lives. It's fascinating. It's so much fun. And that's the whole reason I love doing this. I'm excited to learn about you, man. Like I'm here over, oh my goodness, I can't even speak. It's early. Forgive me. I'm over here, like rubbing my hands because I'm so excited to learn a little bit about you and just kind of, who you are and everything. It's exciting. So what I'll do is I'll kind of move us along from here and kind of give you a little bit of an opportunity just to, tell me about yourself, like what do you enjoy doing? If you're comfortable sharing, like what your job is, any of that stuff, just I guess kind of start from the beginning. Like, who is Steven? Like my name is Daniel, you are Steven, like who are you?
So funny enough, I'm quite lucky, I guess. Just kind of jumping back to some stuff you just mentioned.
Yeah, of course.
The job I do, I travel a bit, not necessarily in the last kind of year, but I work with people across the world. So I work. It's a strange situation, but I work for a company that sells water dispensers to businesses, right? So
Okay.
it sounds pretty niche, but you'd be pretty amazed just how big a business can be in that space if they do things well. And we operate in actually 18 countries now,
Wow.
and we have a big presence in North America. So pretty much every couple of days, I'm on a call with someone who's based in our North American office. It's actually based in Dallas, in
Okay.
Texas, but we have some offices on the West Coast, which would be a bit closer to yourself. So that kind of whole public speaking thing was always going to be fine for me with the podcasting.
Okay.
And again, because it's very different to what you and I are doing right now, where you and I barely know each other, right? So you actually do need to rely on kind of those public speaking skills, which my job is kind of gave me a lot of opportunities to at least practice that area. Whether I'm good at it or not, who knows? But because I do the podcast with two of my friends, it doesn't feel like that. If you get what I mean, it just feel like just us three having some fun, right? While I learn, which has been really great because it just doesn't feel like a job. It's like I said, it feels more like a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
But also the reason I bring this up is because very often I've had to kind of tell people about myself. So that, in a business where we're in 18 countries and I'm relatively senior within my company, so I'm involved in like on a normal day I can have maybe 7 different meetings, and half of them are probably with people internationally. So I'm frequently meeting new people from different countries and things like that. So you always have kind of the icebreaker you talk about yourself. But yeah, so to kind of give you an idea of who I am. So I'm 31. My name's Stephen. I'm from Wales. Do you know? Have you ever heard of Wales? It's based in the UK.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of the country Wales?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was really close to visiting there. I was in London for a little bit and I really wanted to go
Wow.
to
Okay, cool.
Wales. Sadly, couldn't go to Wales. I know, based off of The Crown on Netflix, I know a little bit about the
Gotcha.
history
Okay.
of Wales and, the royal family and kind of all that and how that went down. And I'm familiar with Gareth Bale. So, yeah, I know
Okay.
Wales a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. throughout my lifetime, whenever I've gone to other countries, whether it's been on holiday or through work, when I was younger, if my parents ever took me away on a vacation, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you would ask a stranger if they'd ever heard of Wales, they would say Ryan Giggs, right? I don't know if you know, if you're
Oh yeah, I
familiar
forgot
with
about
Gareth Bale,
him.
you might be familiar with Ryan Giggs. Yeah, so I remember kind of the first, I'd say, 15 years of my life, whenever I was in a country and someone knew Wales, it would usually be connected to Ryan Giggs. But for the last 5 years, 15 years, it's been Gareth Bale, right? So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so it's funny just how I'm a big football fan, and it shows how football really does kind of reach pretty much every area of the planet.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just it's funny you say that, because the last place I was in, I think the most interesting place was, someone mentioned Gareth Bale, was me and my wife went to Egypt a few years ago for kind of a 2 week beach holiday, and we were in this, to be kind, this kind of rough area,
Mm-hmm.
and we were in one of these stalls, and I was talking to this kind of Egyptian man, and the only thing I could really understand what he was saying was Gareth Bale, which quite funny. But yeah, so 31, I've been in Wales most of my life. I lived in Scotland for a little while because I have some family that live there. But I lived in South Wales for most of my life. Been in marketing for almost 10 years now. I'm
Wow.
a digital marketing manager. I've worked the current company I work for 5 years.
Okay.
Had a couple of promotions there, but like I say, they manufacture bottle-free water dispensers, is what we call them. So, they're better for the environment. They have some technology which can protect the water from viruses and things like that, which, as you can imagine, is really important at the moment.
Mm.
So we do a lot of marketing around helping people understand why, how great our products are, versus more traditional bottled water coolers, which most of us are more familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
And so we invest quite a lot in marketing, and I manage all of our online marketing for that business. So I've always wanted to do marketing. I did marketing at university. I did marketing at college as well. So it was something that I always wanted to do, and I've really loved, and I've managed to kind of grow a relatively decent career over the last 10 years, which has been great. And also in that time, I've got married. I have a wife who I live with, and she's absolutely amazing. Like I said, this year we would have been together for 7 years.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Got a little dog called Winston, a black cocker spaniel, who I absolutely love.
Nice.
Sorry, go on.
No. Please go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm just kind of saying like nice or like cool or yes.
Okay.
Like just trying to add that. Yeah. That's what I
Yeah,
do.
sure.
So if you hear me speaking, and I'm not trying to speak over you, I'm probably just saying like yeah. Like I'm interested. So forgive me.
No problem. And as we've kind of already alluded to, I've got a daughter on the way. So I've got a daughter who should be with us in June, beginning of June. And that was the whole kind of motivation for my podcast. And yeah, so that's kind of me, what I do, and kind of my home situation. Got lots of hobbies, right? One of them is football. So I love watching football. Before coronavirus, I love playing football. I used to play five-a-side with a few friends kind of every week, which is a lot of fun. I like to keep fit just generally. Again, before COVID, a lot has changed since COVID. But before that, we usually would have been in a normal gym. As I've said, kind of in the UK, they've been strict over the last 12 months with what you can do and things like that. So that's moved to more doing exercising at home. I've got a garage, and I've kind of set that up to a semi gym, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I've still managed to keep that up, even though I've been locked indoors. And also podcasting is a huge hobby of mine now, listening and now recording. So that's a big thing. And I do a bit of moonlighting with my job, because I do digital marketing. I'm involved in kind of online advertising, and also online branding and making websites. So every now and then, if a friend needs a favor, or a friend has a business, I'll kind of dabble and help them get a website set up, or maybe do some paid advertising if that's something they're interested in. So that's me, right? But it's funny, back to kind of what I mentioned at the beginning, because of my job, I've over the last 5 years, I've been with WaterLogic, it's the company I work for.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to loads of different countries, right? Been to so I've been to New York in America. I've been to Philadelphia. I've been to Delaware. I've also been to Australia. I've been to lots of different European cities. Even though I've been to a few European cities just traveling with my wife, which is another hobby I have, which is definitely going to go out the window once our child is here. But yeah, so I've had a good opportunity to kind of see a lot of the world. With my job and with my wife's traveling interests. I think that really helps for just these type of moments, even just generally public speaking. The more situations you're in where you're meeting people and you're in unfamiliar environments, being able to converse and have conversations and that to feel naturally. Or that to feel natural, I think that experience helps. So my wife's quite funny. She's a bit different to me. She's probably more introvert as opposed to extrovert. And when I told her about doing this with you, she was like, "That sounds crazy to her, right? Having a conversation with a stranger who's kind of in a country hundreds and hundreds of miles away." And I just told her, to me, I don't think it'll be fine, right? We'll have a conversation, you'll find out about me, I'll find out about you. And like you said, right, I was excited about it, right? Because something I want to know about your podcast and this podcast that we're doing right now is some of the kind of conversations you've had with people, and what are maybe some of the more surprising things that you've covered, which you like burlesque, for example.
So what we'll do is there's a few things I want to ask you real quick before I forget them, and then I'll talk about mine kind of towards the end.
Sure.
But so you say your company deals with filterless water bottle things. I'm sorry, like you said it a few times, and every time you said, I was like, wait, what?
So what maybe I'll explain it a different way. So think of a water cooler that most people are familiar with, right?
Yeah.
That are in the office or maybe in a waiting room.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're a bit of a pain most of the time. So first of all, the biggest pain that most people are used to is they run out of water, right? Because they have that kind of 8-gallon or 15-gallon bottle of water that sits on the top, and that can run out, particularly in the summer, and it's a pain in the ass if you have to change it and get a different one. It's a nightmare. So that's kind of the thing we're most familiar with. But also, that's a plastic bottle, right? It's not great for the environment, even though businesses do reuse them, which is good, right? It's better than just discarding them.
Yeah.
It's still not fantastic. And also, most of them are fairly basic, right? So they have the bottle. They can give you cold water. Sometimes they can give you warm water or lukewarm water. And that's pretty much it. So what we do is completely different. So our machines are actually connected to your mains water line. It sounds more complicated than it is. It's what we call soft plumbing. So we basically have kind of a plastic tube that connects to your mains water line, and it takes a couple of hours to install. And then because it's plumbed in, you never run out of water, right? So you don't have to worry about changing water. You don't have to worry about picking water up and things like that. And then also we have loads of technology that can just make that water as best as it can be. So we've got water filtration technology. We've got this UV technology, which actually kind of destroys 99.9999% of bacteria and viruses. We're the only company in the world that can actually do that.
Oh.
And then also our machines are fairly sophisticated. Generally, they look more like spaceships than water coolers, to be honest. But we have one, like our most premium dispenser, which is called the WL7 Firewall. Firewall is our kind of patented UV technology. It can do all of that, everything I've just explained, but also it can offer you 5 different water options in one machine. So you can have cold, you can have ambient, you can have hot, you can have extra hot, and you can have sparkling water, all from one machine. So we're kind of the Rolls Royce. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. It's a UK term, but let's say we're more like the Tesla of the water dispenser.
Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So we're and we also have we kind of have a completely different business model. So a lot of companies out there, they sell the machine, or they usually give you that kind of, let's say the bottled water example. Once you have that in your office or wherever you have it, right? They'll give you the machine for free, and then you have to pay for bottled water whenever you run out, right? So the way we work is slightly different. It's like you get a machine, we install it for nothing, and you rent the machine from us, so you pay kind of a low monthly fee every month. And then you have all the features and benefits of our product. And if anything ever goes wrong, there's a service package kind of included in the price. We'll come out and we'll visit you, and we'll maintain and service the machine every year. We'll change the filters and things like that. So we try to give you the best product possible with all the kind of bells and whistles. So you have something that no one else can deliver. And also we try to make sure that product kind of works and delivers the best water it can do for the entire time you have the product. So it's actually, it's nice if you think particularly that the COVID side of things, and with so many people much more kind of sensitive, and rightly so, to viruses and things like that, because we actually also have this technology on our products called BioCoat. I don't know if you've ever heard of this. It's a silver additive you add at the manufacturing stage, and it essentially means that viruses they can grow, but very slowly on surfaces. So it reduces the rate in which viruses and microbes can grow over time. So our product is really kind of the most hygiene product you can buy in the space. And what I do every day is I work with a team that helps market that across the world, right? In all of our 18 countries, from America to South America, North America, Australia, Eastern Europe, Central Europe. So it's really, really amazing. It's been absolutely great 5 years. I didn't really think I'd stay there that long. I always thought, I'd be there for a few years, and I'm a fairly ambitious person, but for the last 5 years, it's given me everything I wanted, and I've managed to get kind of a promotion while I've been there and things like that. And I've managed to grow a team. So it's been great, and it continues to kind of give me the right challenges every year, which is really, really great.
Yeah, that's cool. I haven't heard of something like that. So when I went to university, we had these little, I don't know, like in wall metal water fountain things. But what you could do is you could stick a water bottle under it, and then it would like dispense water from the top into the bottle. And so I thought maybe that was something that you guys were doing, but it doesn't sound like that at all, because ours was super basic. Yours sounds a little more technologically advanced. There we go.
Yeah, we do actually. So in some of our markets, we sell that type of product. So in the UK, we actually don't sell it in North America yet, but we will do shortly. In the UK, at least, we have a product like that. So it's like we call it a bottle filling station, but it's the same thing. It's integrated into the wall. It's often in public spaces, so at universities or in public parks and things like that. But again, we try to go the extra mile. So our product, our top of the range product, has UV filling and it's contactless. So you can kind of wave your hand over the machine and it dispenses the water rather than you having to touch anything to reduce the spread of germs. So yeah, so we also do sell those type of products, only in the UK right now, but we will be in the USA if not this year. I'd probably say the end of this year. So.
That's really cool. I like that thing. If I had an office, I would definitely get in contact with you guys. That's really cool.
Well, yeah, if anyone's listening and you want to, right, WaterLogic is the company to look for. If you search for us online, you can find us. Yeah, it's a great company to work with. If you think about what we're trying to do as a business, we're trying to reduce the amount of plastics that go into landfill. We're trying to help people live more hygienic and safe lives in their workplace. It's a great kind of mission and company to work for, and we have great products, and I work with great people. So yeah, it's I feel kind of very lucky that I've landed there, to be honest.
Yeah, it sounds like a nice place. So I'm curious about your fascination and your love for football. How did that come about? Because I mean, here's the thing. So of course, being in North America, we call it like it makes me wince when I say it and it comes off my tongue. But soccer, like I don't like that. But it wasn't very popular over here, and so when I went into school and everything, and found it and started playing it, fell in love with it. I love watching the English Premier League, but a lot of people over there, from my ignorant North American understanding, you guys are pretty much indoctrinated into football. And so was it something that you just grew up with, or was it something that, you saw your mates playing, outside and you're like, oh, let me join Phil, or I don't know what a typical Welsh name is, but like like what got you into it? And then of course, what's your favorite team?
Yeah, before I go on that, apologies. You could probably hear my dog barking in the background. I do apologize for that. Someone
Nah,
has just knocked the door.
it's all good. I didn't hear it. So
But yeah, okay, great. So good Welsh names first before I get into the football piece. So, Phil, not so much. Maybe something like Reese
Reese.
yeah, or David. Yeah,
Oh,
we've got some like northern Welsh names, but I grew up in like Gareth would be kind of a popular Welsh name as well. But surnames are big, right? So, like, if anyone called Jones or Davies, is basically you kind of you can't move for Joneses and Davis in Wales.
mm,
In school, there was always kind of half a dozen of those surnames around. But yeah, so the football thing is interesting, and I don't have a problem with North American people calling it soccer, right? What never makes sense to me is American football. Like, I never get the football bit right because there's not a lot of foot hitting the ball going on. I mean, it's kind
exactly.
of yeah, it never really made sense to me. But I get it, right? It's soccer, football. It's fine, but yeah. So my kind of football experience, my whole love for football is an interesting one because my father was never a big football fan. So in the UK, you are right, football is the biggest sport. But in Wales, rugby is a much more is our national sport. Have you ever heard of rugby?
Yeah, I've tried to watch a few matches or games or whatever they're called, but I've never understood it. It just seems like a bunch of really big guys just plowing into each other. And so I don't understand why when you get the ball and you cross the end zone or whatever it's called, you have to place it down. Or when you have to try and kick it through, like I don't understand any of it.
Well, yeah. Well, I don't blame you, right? So if I can imagine, right? I've watched rugby with enough people to know. When I watch American football, I don't know what's going on, right? And you kind of need to know what's going on to be able to enjoy your
Valid.
sport.
Yeah, yeah.
So I completely get that, and that's probably one of the reasons why football is so universally enjoyed is because it's a fairly simple sport, right?
Hmm.
You need to kick the ball into the other team's net, and that's pretty much it, right?
Yeah.
In with American football and rugby, there's loads of rules, and even actually as a rugby fan, rugby changes its rules quite often.
Wow.
So I completely get it. And if you're not educated, it will just look like complete chaos. So in Wales, that's our kind of national sport. We're surprisingly good at it for a country where there's only like 3.5 million people that live in the country.
Hmm.
We're always in kind of the top 5 teams in the world, and up until the last 12 months, I'd say the 10 years previously, we had our national team had this world-class coach, this New Zealand coach, and we were top 3 team in the world for 10 years running, to
Wow.
be honest. So we've always overachieved with rugby, which is why it's been a kind of a big national sport. There's a lot of hills in Wales, and people say it's because where we used to play in sport running up hills, which is why they people say we're so good at it. But football's an interesting one. So football's still popular in Wales, but nowhere near the popularity of rugby. But yeah, so as I said, my dad was my father was more of a rugby fan. My grandfather was a big football fan, so he was a big Liverpool fan, but
Mm,
also Liverpool are known worldwide.
yeah.
He was also a big Cardiff City fan, which is my like where I grew up, the city I grew up in, and they're an okay football team. They've had a couple of seasons
Yeah.
over the last few years in the Premier League.
Yeah.
You might have heard of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Swansea
Yeah.
Football Club is the more known team.
Mm-hmm.
because they were in the Premier League
Yep.
for much longer. But they essentially Swansea is Cardiff City's rival team, right?
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so a lot of my friends who are big Cardiff City fans, Cardiff City Football Club fans, hated the fact that Swansea was so successful. And actually, Swansea are doing really well in the kind of the league below the Premier League, so they
Mm-hmm.
could very well be in the Premiership, the Premier League, sorry, next season. But my football kind of love started with my cousin. So I have a cousin called Anthony. And when I was younger, because I played rugby when I was a child, didn't really play football. He was a big Manchester United fan, probably at the age of maybe 6 or 7, and I'm 2 years younger than him. So he had, and Ryan Giggs played for Manchester United, right? And
Mm-hmm.
during this time, so he had Ryan Giggs posters on his wall, and he had kind of there was a lot of 6, 7, 8-year-old boys do, they have their
Yeah.
room kind of kitted out as with their favorite sports team. So I just kind of adopted that team as my favorite team. You've got kind of one of the best Welsh footballers of all time playing for this team. They're really successful at the time. When I was about 6 years old, this is 1995, right? So the team is fairly successful. My favorite color is red, and the team play in red, right? So you combine all these things together. I just started supporting Manchester United when I was younger. Ironically, as I've got older and I've stayed a Manchester United fan, my cousin, who kind of led me down that path, has become a Cardiff City fan. So he supports his local team. And he now kind of has a dig at me for being a Glory fan and supporting a team that's in a
Yeah.
completely different country. And I have to keep reminding him, this is your fault, right? So
Yeah.
so um so yeah, but I've just stuck with it, right? It's a lot of my friends are football fans, and inevitably in school you play a lot of football in the UK on most boys, and at the kind of break time, or what you would call recess, right, in the States, we're always playing football kind of on the concrete. So it's just kind of stuck with me, and it's like with all sports teams, as soon as you've chosen a team, they're kind of with you for the rest of your life, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
so yeah, so that's the whole kind of football thing with me. But yeah, and I try to play right now at a really poor level. I'm not going to lie, right? We play five-a-side, or we played five-a-side at a local kind of five-a-side organization, a competitive organization. And before lockdown, we were playing. I think we played 5 years in a row, right? Pretty much every week, 5 years.
Wow.
And I think of those 5 years, we were. And also you have to consider a season is about 20 games, because essentially you play 20 games with
Yeah.
11 teams, whatever, over 20 weeks, and then the season starts again. And depending on how many teams have joined or left, they kind of rejig the leagues. So over the last 5 years, we've this is how bad we are. We've only been promoted once, and every other season we were in the bottom league, and we never got out of the bottom league.
Oh
So
no.
so yeah, so we were pretty bad, but we just it was more for as you get older, and as you start having families, it was more of an excuse just to spend kind of an evening with your friends more than the football. The football was
Yeah.
just something to do, to be honest.
Mhm.
So we didn't mind too much that we were bad, but it's undeniable we were one of the worst football teams that I've ever played at goal football in Cardiff in the UK.
That sounds so unfortunate. I mean, I've been on those teams before when I played in my younger years, to where like you just lose every game. Like of course you kind of have fun, but there was one team that I played for, and we lost every single game, and it wasn't like blowouts either. It wasn't like 7-0. Like they were close games. But we lost every game except for the very last game. I scored a beautiful free kick, and we won the game. And I was young, and so I was like, yeah, like that was all me. But it's man, football. I love it so much. You say you're a Man United fan, and I'm a
Yes.
Chelsea fan, so we
Okay.
have to be enemies. So at least you're not a Liverpool fan. When you said, I think your grandfather was a Liverpool fan.
Yeah.
I love watching Liverpool. Like they're fun. I like watching Mo Salah and Sané and everyone playing on that team because I love Jurgen Klopp. I think he's a great manager. But when you said your grandfather was a Liverpool fan, I winced a little bit because I'm like, man, you guys are my enemies. Like Chelsea, of course, ain't doing so hot right now. They need to really kick it up. I want them I want them to try and go at least top four, which I don't think is going to happen, or at least top five, so then they can at least play in the European. Um, uh,
Champions
yeah, the
League, yeah.
Yeah, there we go. And
I know the Europa League.
Yeah,
League,
Europa League. There we go. I at least want to see that happen, but I don't know if it's going to happen. But I love football. It's just such a great sport to get everyone together with, and there's so many different amazing rivalries. I was so like I said, I was in London a couple of years ago, and I was actually able to go to Stamford Bridge, and I got to see
fantastic. Yeah.
I got to see all the players leave. I got the timings wrong. It was a Chelsea Arsenal game, which would have been amazing, but I got the time wrong, and so I wasn't able to watch the game. But I got to see all the players leave. I got to see John Terry when he was still playing, and then Didier Drogba was there, and so I got to witness, his glory, just leaving from the parking garage. And I got to see all these other amazing footballers, and it was so like, man, I love this sport. It's such a good sport. It's so much fun to play. It's fun to kick a ball around. It's fun to watch. It's so cool to see all the different tactics that all the different managers bring into the teams and everything. It's just such a fun sport to watch. I love it so much, and I'm so glad that I'm able to at least share that love with you, and we can kind of go off each other a little bit, because it's really rare actually for me to find someone from Europe that actually enjoys watching football. It's so weird.
Really?
Yeah, I've spoken.
Surprising.
Well, so I should say it like this: the people that I've spoken to have not enjoyed football.
Yeah, sure.
And so I mean, when I was over there, almost every country that I went to, there were so many people who were, they had the scarves, and they were chanting, and everything for their team. But I've spoken to a decent amount of people from Europe, and they haven't enjoyed football. And I'm like, what's wrong with you? It's such a good sport. It's the most popular sport in the world. How do you not like it? It's so good. But it's weird to me. Also, so real quick, I'm curious. So you say for your nation, your country, your top 5 in the world for rugby. What are the other countries? I know the New Zealand. Are they called the Blacks? I think that's what
the
they're
All
called.
Blacks. Yeah,
All
the
Blacks.
All Blacks.
Yeah, I know that they're like one of the best. Because I always see advertisements for them.
They're the best. They're undeniably. They're basically the equivalent of not so much of the last 10 years, but Brazil football.
Oh,
That's
okay.
what New Zealand are with rugby. It's the same type of vibe.
Gotcha. What are the other countries that are considered, top in the world for rugby?
So rugby's a strange sport where you kind of have clusters of very good teams internationally. Like it's strange, right? Football to a degree, I guess, but football, there's good teams pretty much everywhere, apart from kind of Australasia, right? Where if you look at those teams, even though it's played, when I say good teams, I don't mean they're bad teams. I mean at international level, particularly at world competitions.
Yeah.
The teams that usually get the furthest in football are usually kind of Central European teams and Southern American teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
South American teams. And more so recently, actually, it's more Central Europe. If you think about the last time Brazil won a World Cup was, God, I think it would have been in the early 2000s. I think maybe 2004.
Yeah.
So the last 18 years has been dominated by European teams. But rugby's interesting. It's like, so most of the UK is pretty good. Scotland are not great at the moment. So England are a really good team. England, I'd probably say in the top 5 at the moment. They're actually better than Wales. I'd say over the last 10 years, Wales and England have probably taken it in turn to be the best team in the UK. Kind of every couple of years it's Wales, then every couple of years it's England. And then you have the kind of New Zealand. You have essentially New Zealand, Australia, and South Africa. They're really good teams and have been for many years. And then, strangely enough, Argentina are a pretty good team as well.
Really?
And they always typically do well. Yeah, it's an odd one, Argentina. I don't know why. I'm not sure what the history is there, like why one country in South America kind of is pretty good at this sport, and and there's not many others that are in South America. But they're decent. They're usually a good World Cup team. They'll usually kind of get far in the World Cups. But if right now, if I was going to say the top teams, it'd probably be New Zealand, then probably annoyingly probably England. Then it's probably Ireland. Ireland got a good team at the moment. And then I might throw in Wales into the top 5 just about at the moment. They're on a bit of a rough run right now. And then you have France, which is really good as well. France is probably the best European team. Well, I know it is the best European team outside of the UK. The other European teams are not great. But it's strange. Have you ever heard of the Six Nations in rugby? Ever heard of that?
The six, I don't think so. Like, I don't think I have.
It's basically a tournament that used to be the Five Nations, and it was Wales, England, Scotland, and France. So it was an Ireland. So it was the kind of the UK countries, and then also France. And that tournament's been around for decades now. The actual Home Nations rugby tournament's been around for many decades, but in the like late 90s, that was expanded to include Italy, but Italy are just a really bad team. They've been in the Six Nations now for over 20 years, and they're just awful. But once you move away from those European teams, there's not many that play it. So yeah, you kind of have these pockets, kind of central, but mainly Western Europe, like extreme Western Europe, and then you have kind of Australia, Australasia area, particularly New Zealand, New Zealand and Australia. Then you also have South Africa, and then you have Argentina. Anywhere else, not so great. There's a few like Samoa. There's a few kind of island teams which are not too bad. Like Fiji and Samoa, pretty decent. But the top 5 usually include Wales, England, Ireland, New Zealand, and Australia or France. But they kind of move around a little bit. But to be honest, I've been watching rugby I've been playing rugby since I was 6 years old. I played from 6 to 16 years old. Mm-hmm. So I played it for 10 years, and I've watched it since I was 6. And there's not been many teams other than the ones I've mentioned which have kind of broken into the elite teams. Whereas in football, you'll see now and then kind of Japan, when Japan had the World Cup, they were really good. Like South Korea have had a good run. You've had, many years ago, you had Greece winning the Euros, the European Championship. So these things happen in football. Mm-hmm. In rugby, it's kind of the teams that have been good for the longest. There's no real risk that's going to change anytime soon.
So I wonder if that's because there's just not as many. Well, here's the thing. There could be more people playing rugby than football, but I wouldn't assume so because you don't hear a lot about rugby, at least here in the States. So I wonder if that's more of just, because there's only X amount of people that play rugby, not as many people as football, there's not as much competition maybe?
100%. So there's nowhere near as many people playing the game as there is playing football in Europe and in the UK, and also all the countries I mentioned, right? 100% more. I think maybe the only country which might play it more of the ones I mentioned is probably more people in Australia playing rugby than football. They're not a strong footballing nation in Australia. So you're right. There's not a large or as large of a player pool, and it's a strange one, right? I think what's happened, particularly over the last few years, is rugby was pretty late to be professional. I think it was 1999, even though there was professional leagues and there was professional World Championship tournaments. All rugby players were semi-professional, right? So it only turned professional in 1999, and I think what happened is the more mature nations, the nations that were better at it, kind of really upped their game in how elite the sport is. And you see them, right? If you see a rugby player, they're like Greek goddesses, right? They're unbelievable. It's like they're chiseled out of stone. The kind of the physique of them and how physically fit they are is phenomenal. And that changed in a pretty short period. It was probably like a 10-year period from 1999 to 2009, where players just became these crazy physical specimens. And I think it's just too hard for other smaller nations without the budgets to kind of catch up. I think that's why, whereas other sport like football, because it doesn't have, it's not about the physical element of it. Teams like Liverpool, they are physical in regards to kind of fitness. They are elite athletes. So definitely fitness plays a huge part in it. But you don't need to be kind of these huge, super athletes to be able to be good at football. You have someone like Messi, right? So you're probably familiar with Messi, probably one of the best footballers of all time.
Yep.
And of course, he's a fit guy, right? He's a professional footballer. But then, you have look at players like Ronaldo and Cristiano Ronaldo. Cristiano Ronaldo is kind of, a perfect specimen of a human being, right? The guy has his body fat's probably like 1% or something. But both of those players can be the best footballer in the world. Whereas you can't, to be the best rugby player in the world, you have to be kind of a certain build and a certain physique.
Okay.
And I think that might be why there's almost like a threshold which you can reach with if you're not kind of investing the money that you need to in the sport.
Gotcha. That makes sense to me. Yeah, I guess I never really realized. Well, I mean, when you watch rugby, or at least the matches that I've watched, they're always huge, just hulking guys. And so I guess I just never really made the connection that, you see some footballers and they're little scrawny people, like Peter Crouch, like that guy is like, he's tall and lanky. And so I guess I just never really made that connection that you should probably be a big boy if you want to play rugby rather than some, stick that can just run fast. So that makes sense to me. Yeah.
It's funny though, if you ever look at you probably won't, right? But if you ever, for whatever reason, look at rugby games from the 1980s, like if you look at a football game from the 80s to a football game now, right? The only real change you'll see is that the shorts were a lot shorter in the 80s, right? That's probably the biggest kind of visual thing you'll see. It's of course it's a faster game, and footballers run more, and they are more technically gifted, but if you just watch 10 minutes, you're not going to really see a huge difference. If you watch a rugby game from the 80s to a rugby game now, the difference is absolutely remarkable. Like, you'll see players who were out of shape, right? You'll see people that are overweight, and particularly the forwards, right, who can barely run. You'll see backs which are tiny and scrawny and don't have an ounce of muscle on them. They still play the game really well, right? Technically, they're all gifted. But, fast forward kind of 40 years, the change in the physical requirements of the sport have changed like no other sport I've ever seen, right? Which like I said, which I think just creates kind of a bit of a barrier for people to get into. It's sad to a degree, right? Because the reason why I played rugby when I was younger, I was like I said earlier on, I'm big into keeping fit now. When I was younger, I also played a lot of sport, but I also ate a lot of food, right? One of my passions is eating a lot of food. So when I was younger and I was a little bit more carefree with what I ate. The good thing about rugby is there's a position on that pitch for every type of body shape, for every type of fitness. So it's a very inclusive game. Particularly at young ages, when I was 6 and I was playing rugby, it's touch as well. So you probably have, I imagine when you're younger, American football, there must be touch American football, I imagine, right? Where you touch and that's a tackle. In rugby, you do that, right? So
yeah.
So, and we had girls. So when I was 6 years old, half the team were full of girls, right? And girls and boys played together, and you touched each other. So you just little pat out, and that's a tackle. Then you've got to recycle the ball. So it's a really inclusive game at kind of grassroots level. But then as you get older, it changes fairly dramatically. Whereas in football, if you're the fat kid on the football field at 6 years old, you're usually in goal, right? And I was in goal a lot when I played football, to be honest. That was my experience with football at 6 years old.
That's it. It is kind of true, it's true, and it's weird to see the evolution of sports and how almost glorified it is. Because like you were saying, way back in the day, if you look at a football game, a lot of the players are going to have the same builds as today. You know, you might see a few guys who are maybe a little bigger or some guys who are maybe a little skinnier. But for the most part, like football really hasn't changed. It's not like you need to build, 100 pounds of muscle. So then you can be able to, tackle someone or,
Exactly.
not get tackled. It's all the same, like agility is one of the big things, agility and speed. And so you don't need a lot of muscle for that. But of course, like I said, I haven't watched rugby, but hearing you say from just a 40-year difference from 1980s rugby to 2020s rugby, it's crazy to hear that people back then, they were just kind of average Joes, average people trying to play rugby, kind of thin, maybe not the biggest built, but then like I said, you watch it today and these guys like it's so funny. I tried watching a game when I was living with my parents way back in the day, when I was still younger, and my mother walks in the room. She's like, Dan, like, this is a scary game. And I was like, nah, dude, like, look at this. They're these big hulking guys just beating up on each other. And she's like, those guys would look at you and break your legs, like they just are so intimidating and so big. It just kind of, it's so weird to see the glorification and the, not deification. I feel like that's a little too far, but, just how sports have evolved into such a, it's I'm not sure, I guess, what the word is, but it's so interesting to see, just the evolution of it and how they're now just so big and so sought after. It's very, very interesting. I'm gonna move us forward just a little bit to kind of start moving towards that end because we are kind of we're starting to hit times a little bit. I do have one more question though I want to ask you. And then you can ask me whatever you'd like, because I do know that you mentioned earlier, you want to hear a little bit about me and my journey with podcasting. But real quick, and this might sound a little forward, and if you don't want to answer it, I totally understand. So I'm going to try and frame it in a way that isn't too like pushy. But
I'm excited for this question, by the way. I'm on the edge of my seat for this question.
Awesome, good. So. And again, this might be a little too personal, but you said, you and your wife, you were trying to have a kid for a while. I'm just kind of curious because my wife and I, of course, we're thinking about having a child, somewhat soon. Like, we want to start trying sometime in the near future. I'm not getting any younger. I'm going to be 27 this year. I think she's going to be 24 or 25. I should know that. But so with
you might want to cut that bit out of the post edit on this one.
She doesn't listen. It's okay.
If your wife's listening.
Yeah.
Okay.
But with you and your wife trying, what were some of the difficulties that you faced in that? Or was it something that just happened faster than... You see where I'm trying to go? Because, of course, I don't want to ask something that's too personal.
Look, at the end of the day, Daniel, how'd you like being called? Daniel? You okay with Dan?
Dude, I'm fine with you. I don't care, honestly. As long as you get my attention, I'm okay with it.
Okay. So I think it's probably... we're on a podcast, right? I do a podcast about becoming a dad. Trust me, I have no problem discussing this.
True. I just wasn't sure, if it was something that was like a touchy subject or something, and I didn't want to overstep my boundaries. So
no, it's really not. And funny enough, so my podcast is called More Than Leaving It In, right? And it's a bit of a joke, right? I don't know if that makes sense in the States, but
yeah.
So it's crude and it's supposed to be crude, right? But the logic of that thing was when I started trying with my wife, that's all I was doing, right? So it's interesting you say you're not getting any younger. I'm 31, right, Dan? So 27, mm-hmm. your wife's 24. You still got a few years left in you, but definitely I would recommend, right? If you're interested, it's worth listening to my podcast More Than Leaving It In, because the first few episodes we actually discussed this a lot, because that's the situation I was in, where it was taking longer than I expected. But when I started with my wife, it was more of we weren't really trying, we just weren't not trying. So we just stopped using protection. So and the reason why I didn't want to try is because we weren't in any real rush. We were like, look, when it comes, we'll start stopping using protection. And if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, we'll just, hopefully it'll happen in the future.
Yeah.
So for the first few months, when I started the podcast, we weren't really kind of taking it too serious. And then later on, and I think that was probably for about 3 months, we weren't taking it too serious. But after 3 months, we thought, okay, so it's 3 months, we stopped using protection, and we haven't got pregnant. Maybe we should start taking this a bit more seriously. So what my wife started doing at the time is she started using a fertility app. So this app, essentially, what the woman does is she enters her kind of, when she's on her period, and you enter that into this application, and it will tell you based on your last period when you're most fertile. So it's like, 1 week out of 4, and this is something that it sounds stupid, right? And honestly, sometimes I look back at what I didn't know before I started doing my podcast, and I really was an idiot about this area. Like I'm a reasonably educated person. I like to know things, but this was just kind of a blind spot, which I just knew nothing about.
Yeah.
But I didn't even really think about the fact that in any 4 weeks, a woman is only really fertile a week of that month, right?
Yeah.
So through using this fertility app, we knew the days which we were most likely to get to get pregnant. And she also started using these fertility sticks as well. So you essentially pee on the stick. The woman pees on the stick, and the stick will let you know, like little color codes, whether you're really fertile or not, right? So what we did is, after 3 weeks of just stopping using protection, but not really paying attention, when we were actually trying and things like that, we started using this app and using these sticks. And then within the second time, we got pregnant. So it wasn't too challenging. It wasn't like I was crazily worried. Interestingly enough, one of the reasons why I chose the 2 friends I have on my show was, even though both of them are good friends of mine, and I know their personalities would be perfect for a podcast, one of them got pregnant within a week of trying the first time. When him and his wife decided they wanted to get pregnant, within 1 week they got pregnant. And the other one, it took over a year for their to get pregnant, and they actually had to have tests and things like that. So their first pregnancy was more complicated, and yeah, so what was really fascinating, I knew by bringing those 2 on to the podcast, not only would we be able to, would I be able to learn things, I'd get kind of very different viewpoints and experiences of that. Also, one of them had a natural birth, and it was a really tough natural birth for their first child. The other one had a C-section, and it was much simpler for their first child. So I knew going into it that I'd have some pretty different experiences for me to draw from. So during the kind of first 6 months, because from the time I decided with my wife we let's get pregnant or try for a baby, to the time we actually got pregnant, it was about a 6-month period. It was reassuring to talk to the 2 guys on my podcast, Matt and Paul, to talk to Matt and be reassured it's nothing to worry about, just keep trying and everything will be fine. So that was my experience, and yeah, I don't mind talking about, because hopefully it can help people. Because if I'd known in the past, or say my situation was different, say from month 1 I was like, right, we're 100% trying, I probably would have started, or me and my wife would have started using those fertility apps and those fertility kind of sticks earlier, if we were really desperate to get pregnant as soon as possible.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's interesting, because of course I'm a guy. I mean, I'm still considered young in a lot of people's eyes, and I'm not very knowledgeable about any of that. Like, it wasn't until a few years ago that I found out, like women are only really super fertile during that like 1 week. I had no clue. I thought that like they were fertile until they had their period, and then it's like, well, can't really do anything because nothing's really going to happen. And then once it's over, it kind of starts again, and you can get, pregnant whenever. And so there's so many just little things that I'm learning about. My wife is like, you didn't know that? I'm like, I'm a dude. Like, do you think that I look up on the internet, when is a girl pregnant? Like, I don't do that. It's just so interesting to learn about all that stuff, because it is a really interesting part of life. It's such a weird concept, because if you think about it honestly, and of course, I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole. I'll just say this, but as a guy, like, it's such an interesting idea, the whole idea of sex to then create, procreate a child, and all the little things that, happen from, okay, we want to start, or, you have sex and you get pregnant. Like, all that entire process is just so fascinating and so interesting. You know, I'm really, looking forward to just starting that whole thing. But I will say this, I'm excited for you, when your child comes. I think you said June.
June, yeah.
June. And so, I'm excited for you. That's such a cool thing.
Appreciate
First,
it.
congratulations. That's awesome that you're going to be able to experience that. Congratulations to you and your wife. That's so cool. But I'm excited whenever that comes. Whenever it is. First, my wife and I want to get out of this apartment and try and find a house to buy, which hopefully will be soon. But it is what it is, and I'm of course going to start listening to your podcast, especially because you sound very knowledgeable about the subject and everything, and it's something that I need to start to at least brush up on, so I can understand what's going on when we start trying and everything. So I'm excited, to say the least, and it's going to be a cool ride. But
Well, I have a friend who is literally kind of where I was last year, right, with his partner. And he's been listening to my podcast to help, and he's like the same thing, right? He's like, it's just so much stuff he didn't know,
mhm.
and for him, it's one of it's a bit sad, right? The podcast isn't huge, right? I think we've got maybe 30 subscribers, and when I post an episode, I probably get maybe 40 downloads per episode, so it's
Nice.
nothing big, right? And I've done a huge amount of marketing around it. It's just I've got too many things to do in a day to really try to push it. But it's something I'm proud of, and it's something I enjoy doing. But one of
Mhm.
the best things, that bits of feedback I had of him was it's given him exactly what I wanted this time last year, right? It's the type of show I was looking for, that now he can access and listen to, and that's great, because hopefully there's people out there that can learn. And like you said at the beginning, right? Not people learn differently, and I don't mind. I like reading, right? I'm a big reader, but I don't, well, when I have the time, but I just don't have the time anymore. That's why kind of podcasts and audiobooks are so beneficial.
Mhm.
But also people listen differently, and I think having a show which is funny, right? You hopefully people can relate to us, because we're just normal guys, right? We're fairly modern, right? We're not, we're not ultra modern. So I'm pretty sure we will have some views and opinion. We're children of the 90s, right? So, but we're fairly respectable and nice guys, and we're fairly reasonable guys, and we're really kind of respectful to our partners, and we try to be good husbands and good partners, and yeah, and be good fathers. So hopefully people can learn from something that's funny, but also super interesting, and can kind of see me as someone who's in their boat going through this experience. And funny enough, it's you mentioned about the experience you're in, Dan, at the moment, where I'm quite lucky, right? I did it I did everything in the sequence that most people want to, right? I bought a house, then I got married, and then we've got a child on the way. But I also kind of recognized in my show, us three, where you might want to say privileged. I'm not. I don't like the word privileged. I more like the word lucky. Just privileged has so many negative connotations. We are lucky though. We're 100% lucky people, like to be three white guys, right? To be kind of, even though all our parents were working class parents, we've managed to have decent education and be middle class, and have jobs and been able to buy houses and stuff. But I also recognize not everyone's in that situation. And so something I've done recently, I've recorded and once live. I did an episode with my own father, where I kind of went over his experience, and his experience can be more different to mine. So he was 17 when him and my mother got pregnant with
Mhm.
me. And they were living in a kind of bed sit. So it's basically kind of in a shared accommodation when I was born, and they had nothing. So that's for me, right? It's trying to give the other side of the spectrum, where I don't really want anyone kind of like, the reason I mentioned this, you talked about how you want to do it, right? You want to get a house and stuff like that. But sometimes, it doesn't having a child it's never really the right time, I guess. It's when I say that, I mean there's never a right time to have a child, or the best time to have a child. Sometimes you have children before you expect it. Sometimes you have children, in the perfect situation. But hopefully you can, whatever situation you are in, there's something that you can learn from or take away, and it can hopefully put people at ease. Because I know not everyone is in the lucky situation I am. But it's great news to hear that you're looking, you're kind of discussing that with your wife, and hopefully that's something that will work out well for you guys. Because yeah, I'm super excited for June, and I can't wait to meet my little baby. So I'm really excited.
Real quick, have you guys thought about names? If I can ask that.
Ah, God, names. I don't know. Like, how do you pick a name? It's too
Really?
hard. Like, what? Like, honestly, so like I've talked about this on the podcast. Like, it's too important. Like, names don't mean enough to me. The problem with names is that I either don't. If you give me any name, I either don't like the name or I'm ambivalent to the name, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because so there's nothing comes out. I'm like, oh my god, that's the perfect name, and I just don't know how you. And my wife's in the same boat. We had a name for a boy. If we'd had a boy, we kind of had the perfect name, which we'd agreed on and we thought was spot on. But we just cannot, for the life of us, choose a name. And we're doing this thing right now where we're calling, the baby the name, like out loud in the house and stuff, to see if anything can stick. If anything, it's having the opposite effect. It's actually making us go off the names that we thought we liked. So I don't know. I think she's going to be called Baby Girl until she's 18, and then she can pick her own name. I think that's the only.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like
that's
that.
the only option we have.
Yeah, let her pick her own name. I have a running joke with my wife. If we ever have a girl, we're gonna name her May, short for mayonnaise. And so it's just kind of something funny, to think about. Like we talk about names here and there for whatever gender the baby comes out to be, and it's like, man, like what are some of the joke names we can get out? Just to make some fun, folks have fun. But so is there anything you wanted to ask me?
Yeah. So I know the thing for me is you kind of mentioned it a little bit at the beginning to a degree, is obviously you've talked to quite a few people, and you said you've learned a lot. But the question I wanted to ask you, like, what's kind of the most surprising story or surprising thing you've talked to with people as part of this podcast? Is there ever been a moment when you've just thought, holy shit, right, that's absolutely insane? Like, have you ever had that type of moment?
Yeah, so I can actually think of two off the top of my head. One is actually the second episode I ever did. I was talking with an internet friend of mine that I've known for quite a long time, and he and I were talking. He was born in Croatia and moved to Germany, and is currently living in Germany, and he was telling me about some of the history of Croatia that I never knew about, and then all of a sudden he let a little bit. I'll say this. He let a little bit slip about his mental health, and I didn't realize that he struggled with it. And so I asked him about it, and he's like, oh, yeah, I've been struggling with severe mental health disorders for numerous years, for like most of his life. And I was like, wait, what? And he went off for like 30 minutes about everything that he was facing and how he was trying to overcome it and how it's affected his life, and just kept going. And I was like, wait, what? Like, I was so dumbfounded by the fact that I never knew this about someone that I've spoken with for quite a while, and kind of knew what I thought knew about him. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize that. And then he started to go off about some of the ways that people who are now currently struggling with mental health can try and, help themselves, and what they should start doing to try and, overcome it. And I was like, wow, this is so good. And then another one that really left me kind of dumbfounded, and I haven't come up against since, because I feel like that's an appropriate term. I was talking with a gentleman from Portugal who was born in England. His parents moved to Portugal, and he's been living there ever since. And we were talking, and I was just about ready to say, hey, like, thanks for talking, about to end the episode. And I was like, I have one more question for you, just kind of out of the blue. Like, it was one of those weird things to where, like you feel like you should ask the question. And so then you do, and then something kind of just comes out from that, if you know what I'm trying to convey.
Yeah.
And I was like, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And he's like, I really don't see myself alive in 5 years. And then him and I talked for like
Wow.
another 20 minutes about,
Whoa.
suicide and life and how great life is and all that. And it really made me take a step back to realize that as great as this platform is, and how much fun I have talking with people, and the good that can come from it's not all about me. Like, some people need to actually just talk to someone and get something off of their chest, whether that be something along the lines of, I'm thinking about ending my life, or I have really bad mental health problems, I need some help. Like, as much as this is doing for me, it's also doing a lot for other people, even if I don't hear it or see that, or have some way to get some sort of feedback to say, oh, Dan, this really helped me. Like, it is helping people. And so I think that's another big thing that just kind of, whoa, like I can remember he said that, and I kind of like leaned back in my chair, and I was like, oh shoot, like, wait, what? Like, it took me a second to
Yeah,
kind of gather my thoughts, because it's, I'm not any sort of licensed counselor or anything like that. Like, I don't have a degree in that. I do have educational background in psychology, but I don't have a degree. I took a few classes when I was at university, but trying to then appropriately talk about suicide and life to someone was so just, whoa, like, what is going on? Like, this is deep stuff. This isn't something that's just kind of, content for podcasts. No, like, this is legitimately like someone's life on the line. And so I was like, oh man, and it just kind of threw me into a thing to, like I said, it's so important to be doing this, because not only am I learning, but I'm also, really helping people.
Yeah, that's like, mental health is particularly over the last 12 months. If you think about a lot of people's situations, with COVID, it's even more important. It's why, like, I've through my podcast, right? So, talking to my two best friends, guys are really shit at talking, right? They're awful at talking, just generally. Not all guys, but a lot of guys are not good at opening up. And part of that is to do with kind of, traditional stereotypes of what men should be, right? And part of that has to do with just kind of, as you grow up, that how boys are with each other and stuff like that. And that's why I've not talked to my two closest friends about what it's like being a dad in any level of detail, right? Because it's just not something that we've talked about. And it's been amazing to hear from two of my best friends, like, how tough they had it, right?
Mm-hmm.
How tough they found moments, particularly one of my friends, Paul. We talked about this on the podcast. Like, he had a really tough. His first child was really tough, just crying and screaming and awake a lot, right? And it really pushed his and his wife's relationship. It really pushed kind of him, and it was amazing to kind of actually talk to him about that for the first time. And also, the scariest thing for me, which is a bit of an eye opener, is like, I was with him during those moments, right? I was at his house, talked to him and stuff like that while he was going through this situation, and I didn't even notice, right? I didn't even notice he was going through such a tough time. I didn't even ask, right? I was younger and not, dumber then, right? But and it's just because our default is to maybe not ask the questions. Do you know what I mean? Even if it's you're good and they say yeah, that's fine. But you just think, particularly men, a lot of men think, well, if they've got a problem, they're going to talk about it, right? So why should I ask? And particularly COVID, people being at home and being in such situations, mental health is such a huge thing. And Jesus Christ, like, you see how big. Again, this is getting a bit deep, right? But you see how huge, how big it. It's not a disease, but right, Jesus Christ, the amount of people that are taking their own lives, and the amount of young people that are taking their lives, and it's crazy, right? So you want to definitely, whatever you can. You don't need to be. You mentioned it, right? And you're probably more educated than most, by the sounds of it. But you really don't need to be kind of educated to be able to not necessarily give people advice, but to listen. Right, to listen to people. You don't need an education to listen, and that's awesome to hear that who knows, like who knows what that guy would have done, right, or what he wouldn't have done. But who knows what that kind of conversation with him, how that might have helped him, right? And
Yeah, exactly.
you never know, right? It's like I've been indirectly impacted by suicide a few times over the last couple of years, particularly like I come from a city, right? So I come from Cardiff city, and maybe it's a little bit different. Right? I don't know why. Maybe there's more opportunity, but I now live in the South Wales valleys with my wife. And the South Wales valleys is a bit more of a working class kind of environment. It's heavily, it's got a history with mining. So I can imagine some of the mining communities in America, right? And then obviously, because a lot of those mining communities have taken a big hit over the last 30 years, not as much opportunity and things like that. You've kind of got this culture where people maybe don't have as much their life. But yeah, I've had a few moments over the last couple of years, like people my wife knows, where you on the face of it, they seem like people who are loving life, right? And having a great time. You talk to them, you think nothing's wrong, and then unfortunately, they take their life. So yeah, I think, and that's another good thing about podcasts, right? Is that you feel like, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm sure you do as well, Dan. But like I've got a couple of podcasts where it's weird. It is really strange, and when you say it out loud, it's kind of peculiar. But I know the podcasts I listen to, they'd actually like this. Is you feel a little bit like you're their friends. Do you know what I mean? Like it sounds odd, but every week I'm gonna listen to these people I really enjoy for an hour, whatever, and I'm going to feel like I'm part of this conversation, and they're going to make me laugh. And and I'm quite lucky, right? I've never really suffered with any kind of mental health issues, and I've always had, the tough times I had in my life, the rare occasions I have, I've got a good community, like a support network around me. So I'm super lucky. But I know for a fact that just to listen to those podcasts kind of calm me and help my mental space a bit. So yeah, it's talking about it and feeling like you're part of something is super helpful. And sounds like your podcast has done that to some people, which is great, by the way. It's good to hear that, mate.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's something that I'm really hoping, even if I can just help one person, I feel like the whole, like this podcast isn't worth it. Because I mean, like I said, I don't get feedback. It's not like people say, "Oh, like you helped me." And I'm not saying to say do that. It's not like I need that validation. I'm very comfortable with where I'm at and very comfortable with what I'm doing. And people still listen, so I would assume that that's a positive, that I'm doing something correct. But and I've said this to a few people, even if I can help just one person, I spend hundreds of hours doing all this stuff and I can help just one person, then it's worth it, because then that one person, could then theoretically, I don't want to say infect, because that's the wrong word, especially today, but they can, then go and talk to hundreds of people, like it's kind of like the idea of the butterfly effect, like one little tiny ripple in the wind or whatever can then affect a ton of people. And so that's really what I'm going for. But to kind of wrap things up just a little bit, I'm going to ask you one more question, and this is something that I like to ask everyone that comes on across the pond, because like I said, I like to help people, that's really what it is. And of course I like to learn. And so what would be one thing, like a piece of advice or a saying or something that you would like to pass down to someone who's listening?
Okay. So I've got a bit of a mantra in my life, actually, funny enough. And I'm not sure where it's from. I used to know where it's from, but I can't remember anymore. But for me, right, and this always holds true. More is lost through indecision than wrong decision in life, right? And this is not just in life, in my professional career, it's been the same, right? Like, trust me, it's better to make a wrong decision than to make no decision. And you'll get much further in life because you'll take more risks, and sometimes they don't pay out, right? Sometimes, Jesus Christ, like I say this in my job, I have made way more mistakes in life than the wins. I've got way more losses than wins. Trust me. You just got to look at my football record, right? But for me, right, it's when you take those risks and you make decisions, and sometimes they don't pan out, not a problem. But more often than not, when they do pan out right, it'll be, it'll help you progress in life. And that's what I do, right? I'd rather make a decision and take a risk and do a leap of faith, and then, in the future, if it was the wrong thing, at least you've learned from it, right? And you won't make that mistake in the future. But if you don't take the leap of faith and you don't give her a go, you're not moving forward. And for me, yeah, I feel like that's really helped me in my professional career. And funny enough, like every job I've ever taken in my life, I was not qualified for. Like, I'm going to say that right now, right? I somehow managed to convince someone I could do the job, right? I could do maybe 50% of the job, but I was unqualified for the rest of it. But you just learn, right? And you take the risk and you learn, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. And honestly, that kind of mantra and that way of life is why I am where I am right now. It's why I'm lucky enough to have a good job for a company that has a great product making a difference. I'm lucky to have an amazing wife who literally, can be happier. I'm lucky to have a house, my own house, and I'm lucky, and I'm about to have my first daughter, right? And that mantra has really helped me get to where I am. So that's definitely something I would I say to everyone. And honestly, the amount of times I'm in work and I'm in a meeting and everyone's like, "Should we make a decision? Or what should we do?" And I just say that. I say, "Look, we have all the information we have right now. We either don't make a decision and nothing happens, or we take a leap of faith and we make a decision." So yeah, that's definitely something I always. People have asked me the same type of question in the past, and that's always my number one go-to answer.
That's good. That's good. And then real quick, I mean, we already talked about it a little bit, but do you want to shout anything out real quick? Your podcast or socials or anything like that?
Yeah, sure. So my podcast is More Than Leaving It In. Don't let the name put you off. It's not not as laddie as you might think.
It's so good.
But yeah, so you can find that on pretty much every podcasting app. Just search for More Than Leaving It In, or you can go to morethanleavingitin.com to find us. You'll find all the information there. And that's really the only shout out I'd give right now. Most of my socials are kind of my personal stuff. So if you want to listen, then search for More Than Leaving It In. And the best thing to do is to start from the beginning. It's one of those podcasts where it's kind of takes a chronological order to things. So I would definitely recommend start at the beginning and listen your way through. If you're looking to have a child, the way I usually sell it is, if you're thinking about having a child, if you're trying to get pregnant, if you're already pregnant, if you're already a dad and you're looking to be a better dad, or even if you're a woman who's interested in this type of stuff and just want to get a feel for kind of what guys think and what they're going through, definitely give it a listen, because I've had feedback from every one of those types of people saying they've really enjoyed it and got a lot out of it. So yeah, that's the real kind of only one shout out I think I'll give, mate.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, I am excited to start listening because, like I said, my wife and I are at least thinking about it sometime in the near future. So I should at least, try and have some idea of what to expect going in. So I'm excited.
It might put you off. Right? We go into a lot of detail. Like if you really want to wrap your head around it, there's a couple of episodes where we go over like what birth is like, and trust me, there are no punches held back in those ones. And yeah, it's pretty it's an emotional roller coaster. I'm definitely not gonna lie, but at least you'll know what you're getting yourself into, because a lot of guys really don't.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm excited. I'm ready to be just consistently punched in the gut, if you will, with all these things, oh, here comes the right hook. I'm ready for it. Awesome. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for chatting with me for this hour and a half. I'm really excited, or I shouldn't say excited. I'm really thankful that you and I finally figured out a time to talk, because like we said earlier, it's been months in the making. So this was really good. I really did enjoy this. I want to say, thanks again for being open and, just kind of, walking me through, some of the things that you've been going through. And of course, sharing a part of your life, with me. That was, honestly really cool. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for reaching out again, Dan. I know, like you said, we kind of, with Christmas and stuff is just timing was a challenge, right? So I'm glad you reached out, and I knew this was going to be fun, talking to a stranger in America and finding out about them. That's definitely my type of thing. So I love doing stuff like that. So I knew this was going to be fun, and to be honest, Dan, you didn't disappoint. So yeah, thanks for that.
Oh, thanks, dude. You're gonna make me blush. Stop it. Awesome. Well, I hope you can enjoy the rest of your weekend and everything, and I hope you have a wonderful upcoming week.
You too, Dan. And maybe we'll speak again in the future. Who knows? Who
knows? Maybe. Like I never want to say, of course, we're never going to speak again, because I mean, like, here's the thing. I've said that, or at least I've thought that with some people, and then somehow, some way we start speaking again. So I'm like, I probably shouldn't say that. Like, who knows? Who knows? Frick, dude, maybe one of these days when I come back to Wales, I'll see you on the pitch and you'll be playing football or something. I'll be like, wait, I know that. I mean, I don't know what you look like, but like, we'll start talking. You're like, wait, did we talk before? Like, odds are something like that's going to happen.
Genuinely, I can actually maybe incentivize you next time you're in the UK. If you ever are looking to come to Wales, I have a couple of my friends work at the Cardiff City Stadium. So if football is happening and it's post-COVID and people are allowed in stadiums, if you're down and there's a football game on, I can definitely sort us out some tickets.
Oh my gosh, I would love that.
You can watch when the football game. So if that ever does happen in the future, definitely just drop me an email and I'll sort something.
Oh, 100%. I will take advantage of that. That would be so sick. Awesome. Cool. I'll be sure to take you up on that if that ever happens. Okay. Awesome. Well, thanks, dude. Again, like I said, I appreciate your time, and I hope you have a great weekend and a great week.
You too, Dan. It's been great. Hopefully, like I said, hopefully we'll speak soon.
Hopefully. Yeah. All right. Take it easy, man.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Across the Pond. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you want to connect with me on Twitter, you can find me at KingServant, KingServant. If you know someone that would love to be on the show, please send them my email at acrossthepondpod01@gmail.com. You can also find us on YouTube if you want to watch the audio version. There's no video, it's only audio, but you can find us there. I can't wait to bring you some of the episodes that I have lined up. You're going to want to hear these. Awesome conversations. I'm so excited for them. Tune in next Sunday and every other Thursday for another episode of Across the Pond.